is Indiana Borough Police Chief Justin Schawl joining us on the line this morning. Happy New Year to you. Our conversation brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Good morning.
Hi, Happy New Year. Good morning.
Yeah, we've got a pretty ambitious agenda of things that we can talk about here this morning as we begin a new year. I know that, as you begin a new year, like everybody else, you have things you'd like to see happen in this coming year. And in terms of police and what you'd like to see happen, I think just stay the course might be a good way to put it, right?
Well, I think so. I think 2021 gives us some positive opportunities to hopefully engage a little differently than we were forced to in 2020, to reset our footing, to look back on 2020 and learn maybe what we could do better or what we've done well throughout our COVID environment and all of the other issues that we've been tasked with dealing in 2020. So I'm optimistic for 2021 on behalf of all the officers of the Indiana Borough Police Department, and that we're looking for a strong community rebound, and we're looking for some opportunities to create goodwill and positive impacts that have been our mission since at least my appointment in 2019.
When we think back on 2020 and the things in which Indiana Borough Police found themselves involved, I know the review process is constant and that you're always looking at what happened, how did we respond to it, could we have done better, did we do it well? All of those things have to be a part of that process of improving your police department, and I know that you're involved in that. But as you think back, for instance, we were talking, you and I, about the fact that there were 4 shootings in Indiana Borough in the year 2020. And I know that you look at those things and you say, okay, how did we do in response to those shootings? So what did you come up with as you looked at those events?
Well, I'll tell you, as chief, my number one priority is to keep the members of the Indiana Borough Police Department safe so that they can be safe and they can keep others safe. And in that regard, we've had internally and for a large part externally safe year at the police department, but 2020 it gave us no shortage of things to talk about. Police activity exceeded 10,000 calls for service in 2020, and that's with some major shutdowns in community activity. On the same day that Lieutenant Joe Clement retired from the Indiana Police Department and accepted a position with the IUP Police Department as chief, we experienced our first of what would turn out to be 4 shootings in Indiana Borough. COVID-19 emerged late March, which closed our business district for the first time. George Floyd lost his life in police custody in Minneapolis in late May. Then Indiana Borough experienced a series of gatherings and protests in downtown early summer. We saw COVID-19 reemerge with greater local health impact in early fall, and then the Department of Health and Governor Wolf's orders became more restrictive in universal masking and in-person dining and gathering limits late November into the end of the year. So when I look back and we think about a year in review, I would say that through it all, we learned different ways to stay connected with the community in that we turned to some Facebook and social media. We created birthday cruiser parades for children under 12 who had their birthday celebrations impacted through COVID. My office issued 11 messages to our community from late March until the end of the year, really. Officers donated time to ICAP, the Salvation Army, and we were able to make a monetary donation to Birdie's Closet in support of a colleague. We've conducted enhanced business checks and to protect our temporarily closed businesses, and we were forced to investigate 3 more shootings throughout the year. All of those events, as negative as they were, resulted in prosecution, and so we were able to seek closure for the families of all those who were victimized. And so really, as far as the year goes, there's been a lot to review, and we're going to continue reviewing. I'm not here to profess that I have any solid answers about the year, but I can tell you this: I'm proud of the efforts of every member of the Indiana Police Department. We love this community. We want to support it in every possible way, and 2021 also is going to be a year for us to try and reset our footing to look and after action review on some of the more major things that have happened throughout the year.
Yeah, well, gosh, you hear that big long list and you say, yeah, boring year for Indiana Borough Police. Not the case at all. My goodness, that was a lot that you went through, and that's what happens. You get through a year and you say, oh yeah, that happened, and oh, I remember that, and then all of a sudden it adds up, and it was a pretty eventful year. One of the things you were just talking about was the governor's shutdown orders for indoor dining, and that has certainly been an area of increased interest in this past month, with several businesses in downtown Indiana reacting negatively to that, one or two of them choosing to remain open through it. How do Borough Police act in regard to that? What were the pathways that you laid out for your officers to react in that way?
Sure. So on August 6th, Governor Wolf issued its first guidance to local law enforcement, and it was largely to advise and educate our community on his mitigation efforts and the state's mitigation efforts for COVID-19. And in August, September, there were some conversations, many conversations actually, between the police department and members of Indiana Borough's Council, Mayor Hood, where we discussed and considered options that we could best utilize to build public trust, retain public trust, and at the same point in time honor the efforts for public health and safety. November 23rd, the Governor's Office of the Department of Health issued additional guidance to law enforcement, asking that enforcement efforts include some proactive efforts because numbers were rising. So there were additional conversations that were held internally at the police department and again with our local leaders, not only our local leaders, but we've been connected the whole time with our county leaders and our regional leaders. December 12th, some limited time mitigation orders were put in place, and ultimately we embarked upon a strategy that included not only letters but also officers trying to connect with all of our businesses to see if there was anything that we could do to be of more assistance or that we could do to provide better support, given all the things that we knew were our responsibilities and still are our responsibilities as far as enforcement. So unfortunately, we became publicly aware of at least one business, and I'll say one business we've become publicly aware that was remained open throughout the limited time mitigation orders, and really we were open-handed as we possibly could be in our approaches. We advised, we educated, we plugged in, we had conversations both in person and in writing, and at the end of the day, we could not stay connected without punitive enforcement. And so citations were issued, and certainly there's divided mindset throughout our area on whether that path was prudent, whether it could bring value, whether it was capable of delivering or perhaps harming. But I will tell you this, that the decision was not made in the spur of the moment. We had time to consider all options. I feel like we were open-handed and connected as we could be. As with any citation that would be issued from the police department, it was not done with malice or disrespect. As contrary, we had so many conversations with that business that I'm confident, absolutely confident, that they understand the position that the community's in, that the police department's in, and we understand the position that they've communicated. So with a lot of thought and heart, and that's the way I've tried to lead this police department, and that's the way that I know to be successful in the future, is with thought and heart, to be supportive when we can, and to be protective when we need to be.
One of the interesting things about that is that some of the criticisms that are directed in one way or one direction or another, sometimes they're sort of misguided, because police can issue a citation, but those are all subject to judicial review, and so the final decision with that would come from the bench, should the people who are cited in any case be disposed to take them to court. So that would be the final determination on as to whether or not it was proper or done in the right way. You, as I know, as the police chief, you simply have to follow what laws and restrictions are in place from your standpoint, from your perspective.
Well, we're always navigating in paths that we know to be true and right. And to your point, we certainly, to take an enforcement action from the police department, we're asserting that we believe that there's probable cause to issue such a citation or an enforcement effort. But ultimately, it's a judicial system that finds guilt or innocence. And like I said, there was a great deal of thought and heart and placed into the entire investigation, the entire year for that matter, from the police department standpoint. And so we are not the closed book on the story. We're a piece of it. I think as we all look back on 2020 and we understand where we plugged in and how we did, we can all take at least comfort and confidence that regardless of a personal mindset, we're all trying to get the same outcome, which is to get everybody through this safely and with as much prosperity as we possibly can, because Indiana Borough is going to rebuild, and we're going to be stronger than we have been, and the police department's going to take pride in rebuilding with everyone.
You were very, very much more eloquent on that topic than I were, so thank you for that. You did a much better job at that than I did. Hey, I know that within the Borough Police there are always changes, personnel changes. You mentioned Clement and his decision to retire and take over at IUP. You also had a retirement at the end of the year, didn't you?
So to top it all off, we've gone through the year quite shorthanded, and we continue to be shorthanded. So with Joe Clement accepting the director's position at IUP, that left us short. But Borough Council, and as much appreciated, they've recognized that the police department, to best achieve, needs the resources available to it. So starting yesterday, January 4th, we were able to hire a new officer. Her name is Casey Niver. She comes to us from a place called Valier, PA. She'll be starting the police academy next week, and she'll be receiving approximately 6 months' worth of training here at our local academy. That was to replace Joe Clement's vacancy, which has been vacant since February. But also now, with all things in 2020 being a mess, quite honestly, we were able to celebrate the December 31st retirement of Detective Scott Schawl. Scott Schawl served the Indiana Borough community for 26-plus years. For the last, I believe, 14 years, he's been a member of our Criminal Investigative Division. Scott has talk about someone who has historical and technical skill that is going to be felt. The loss is going to be felt. Is Scott Schawl. He's been a great investigator. Again, he's put 26 years of service to the Indiana community. It's going to be a loss that's going to be felt. But as with Joe Clement's loss and vacancy to the police department, we're going to rebound. We're going to build the police department back, and we're going to be able to provide high levels of service that we've set out to do. Yeah,
and the rest of the troops, they'll rally around, and you'll get it done. I sure hope in the coming year that it goes well for Indiana Borough Police. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and for keeping us up to date once a month in these visits here on Indiana in the Morning.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I thank everyone for their support, and I thank the hard work of the men and women of the Indiana Police Department.
Have a great day today.
Thank you.
There is Indiana Borough Police Chief Justin Schawl. Borough Police Chief Justin Schawl. Borough